And what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to episode 194 of the Designated Players Podcast. It has been way too long since we've spoken to you guys, mainly because we've run out of time on Buzzsprout and could not upload. But that time has reset, and we are here to, I'd say, make predictions. But what's the point? I mean, Red Bull's out,
Atlanta's
and
out too.
once Red Bull's out, nobody cares about it. Once Red Bull's out, nothing matters. What we should be talking about, but we won't do it today, is how Red Bull are setting themselves up to be the greatest team in 2024. New manager, new sporting director, new big center attacking mid designated player from Germany. Red Bull for 2024 MLS Cup. I mean, I'm not trying to spoil predictions or anything, but treble. Anybody say treble?
I think you guys are just trying to copy the St. Louis model. Honestly, it's a little sad. You're
Well, what's wrong
supposed
with
to
that? They
be
did it so well with it the first time, so why not? Why not do that?
because you're the veteran of the league. They should be copying your model, not
Yeah,
you
because our
copying.
model's been so good. 28 years, zero cups. Not like the cup matters or anything, because we all know the Shield is a superior trophy. But
Agree to disagree.
c'est la vie. Um, yeah, we're here to make predictions on the conference semifinals. So the four games that are left, and we'll review some of the games and talk about our predictions and why they went wrong. In the first round of, I guess, 16 technically. But first, I got to ask Connor, how are you doing? It's been a while.
Oh wow, very nice of you to ask how I'm doing. I'm doing phenomenal.
Good for you. I'm very happy for you. I can't change my predictions, so I'm gonna have to go on the fly here. Um, anyways, I'm also doing okay. Thanks for asking, because I know you care so much. Um, I'm excited to talk about this stuff. I'm excited to kind of relive some of my predictions that went right or wrong. But I do want to know first and foremost, what scarf are you rocking?
It's only fair considering they beat us and knocked us out. But I've got the ugly crew scarf out.
Those guys are balling, dude.
Well, I think they're susceptible. I think you can beat them, but it's tough to stop that attack. That attack is deadly, but
Yeah,
they
we'll see who
shift
can.
goals pretty easily.
I would say it's not really, I'll say, impressive when they do it to Atlanta, and I say that half jokingly, being that they were one of the less strong defenses and goalkeeper in the league this year. Um, so but I myself am. So my friend who was watching asked, with the Red Bull out, who are we rooting for? And I said, well, everybody in the East is out because we have a vendetta against them. And as you guys know, as I mentioned, I am all aboard Benny Ball hype train. Houston to the moon. Absolutely here for it. Um, Houston are going to be phenomenal. I really like the way they're playing, and no spoilers, but I think they're gonna go on a run here. U.S. Open Cup champions. They know how to get it done. We're gonna have some conversations.
Okay.
So a reminder to those who are listening and maybe new to the process, like we all are. The first round of 16, was a best of three series. And actually, before we'll go on, but I do want to ask your take on the best of three after watching. In the conference semifinals and onwards, it is now single elimination, win or go home. So no more three games, no more aggregate, all life or death games. Connor, I want to ask you about your thoughts on the 3 game series. Have they changed from when we first spoke?
I don't I don't think they've changed, but it kind of went how I expected it to go, considering there was only one, I guess, upset in the first round. Like only one team that was not the higher seed uh moved on to the next round. So clearly there is a very, very big advantage to being the higher seed and having two home games in a best of three series. I mean, that's kind of obvious to say. Like, yes, obviously the team with two home games has the advantage in a best of three series, but clearly there was a significant advantage there, considering 7 of the 8 teams that had two home games moved on. Not every team needed two home games, but still, it clearly has a big advantage. I think it's a bit different than. I'm trying to think if was there any team with a home game in the first game that didn't win their first home game other than St. Louis? I
No.
don't think so. I think they
No.
all won.
Yep.
They all won all their
They
home
all won their
games.
first game.
Yeah. I feel like in a one-off it might be a little bit different. I think the pressure is a little bit different. Maybe it helps in the best of three for these guys to feel like they can have a night off and still be in the competition as opposed to a single elimination where there are no nights off.
Nice.
And I know plenty of people prefer that way, and I'm certainly not against that way. But you kind of get a little bit of best of both worlds and get some single elimination from here on out. You got a little bit of best of three to start things off, but I think at least the nice thing about the best of three sending the higher seeds is we got some great matchups for the next round.
Correct. I enjoyed it. And I'm only going to mention this part of Twitter once because they are making their way up there with USMNT and ProRel Twitter. Is MLS playoff Twitter is annoying out of my mind. I had to stay off Twitter during the playoffs. Like I would get on to tweet about whatever I was watching and then I just closed it because all it was is this format is stupid. There's no reason to do this. Oh my God, what a joke. Blah, blah. Shut up and enjoy the football, man. Like, I've never seen people complain more about extra games. Like, you get to watch teams play. I've never seen people being like, oh my God, I want less soccer. Regardless, the other side of that argument was the first game didn't matter. They can lose 100-0 and nothing matters. I've never ever seen that with any other sport. NBA best of 7, MLB best of 7, hockey best of 7. Not once where they're like, oh man, why are they even playing the first game? It doesn't matter. They can lose 100-0. It doesn't matter. Why is it only here now that it's like, oh, this is stupid because the first game doesn't matter? I think it's a waste of energy and time. Is it Americanized? Yeah. Would I like to see aggregate like where goals matter? Absolutely. Does that mean that the entire first round was stupid and useless? No. There were some awesome games in there. The Columbus Atlanta series was sick. Red Bull broke my heart, but even after the first game, they came out and they played. It's not like, people just rolled over. Houston RSL was a great series. Like, people who are complaining about the best of three being useless, I feel like have nothing better to do than complain about things that don't matter. I enjoyed it. I think there are ways you can change it and make it better. Like I mentioned, I think aggregate involved would make it more interesting. But how do you do aggregate over a 3-game series is kind of tough, right? Do I like the? I've always, and I said this on the last episode too. I've always liked the two legs, right? Home and away, aggregate, make things matter. It puts the same amount of mind games in there. But does that mean I thought that best of three was stupid and useless? Absolutely not. So I enjoyed it. I thought it was a good setup. And again, it's the first time we're trying this. And the other thing I'll say is people always are talking about, they keep changing the playoff format. It's always one thing after the other, change, change, change. Every 2 years, we've got another 4 teams in the league. You have to continue to find the right ways to get this done. So we've talked about how many teams are getting in. It is what it is. By the time we hit a certain number, it'll make more sense. I think the best of 3 is good. It could be better, but I don't hate it. I think it adds a different level of approach and mind games to it. But stop complaining, people. Just enjoy the games. Like if you watch a game, it was like LAFC 5-2 versus Vancouver, and you're like, oh my God, that game was so stupid because it didn't even matter. You're watching the game for the wrong reason. Like you're not you're wasting your time and energy and whatever else you're putting into this because you're going in there with the mindset of like, oh, I'm gonna hate on this no matter what happens. Like enjoy the game. I thought it was good. I had a good time with
Yeah, I don't think we should forget that, other major American sports leagues have also changed their playoff systems recently. The NBA added playing games. MLB added that second wild card team and a wild card game in. Like those are recent changes. That's not like stuff that happened 20 or like 15 years ago. This is like stuff that's pretty recent. And yes, MLS is changing their system more often than those other leagues, but to the exact point that you made, no other league in the US, no other major sports league in the US is changing or growing at the same rate as MLS. Adding new teams in every year, constantly like growing the league, expanding. So I think it makes sense that they're constantly changing things up.
And it will slow down and steady out eventually. The league's not even 30 years old. Like, you can't expect it to be perfect now. It just won't be. But if you're going in and, like I mentioned, if you're looking at that Atlanta series, the Columbus Atlanta series, and being like, that was stupid, it should have been decided by game one, and we shouldn't have seen these last two games that were absolute barn burners, go watch golf, dude. Like, I don't know what to tell you. Like, if you're looking for boring one-off games that are decided by like one goal, I don't know what to tell you, man. Tennis is cool. Go watch tennis. Like,
don't you dare
yeah.
slander tennis. Don't you dare.
I started with golf and I'm like, oh, I know how to get this even better. No. Do you have your predictions in front of you, like the full bracket that you filled out?
Yep.
Do you have all of your final 4 teams in?
I have filled out my full bracket. So or do you mean just
like are they
did I get them all right?
Yeah.
I have 3 of my final 4 in.
I also have 3. Which side are you missing?
West.
Me too. Which top or bottom?
Top.
Okay, I'm missing the bottom. So we'll have a little bit to talk about there. Just a quick recap, I guess, of the first round, very, very quickly. And we'll start with Red Bull Cincinnati, which by very quickly, I mean, we'll finish up here by 9 o'clock.
Go. Settle in.
I was at the second game. Check out Twitter. You guys saw my pictures and stuff with a good buddy of ours who's been on the podcast, Jason, and Papa Barney. And never once, a refereeing performance is poor when my father is screaming expletives down from the second deck with children around him. That's usually very level-headed when it comes to those things. He'll yell and get into it, but he usually keeps himself controlled. Victor Rivas's lack of ability to control a game led to Papa sending his message from the second deck. That is, we need to do an episode on this, but I don't think it breaks like the top 3 worst ways Red Bull have lost in the playoffs in recent memory. But it was a tough one to go up, to get beat on the road. We got murdered. Andres Reyes had an awful series. Tried to play hero ball twice in the first game, and it hurt us twice. We lost 3-0. Came back, was responsible for the goal that Cincinnati scored, and he missed the penalty to knock us out. Young kid, right? He's going to come back. He'll bounce back from it. He's a great defender, but tried too much to be hero ball in the big moments, right? If you're going to step up the penalties with Red Bull and have 2 chances to win the game, miss them both, and you don't deserve to win from there. Should we have been in better positions with penalties and whatever? Yes. Should Matt Miazga been sent off like 90 times before that? Sure. Is Matt Miazga a loser? I reserve judgment. But I think the main point of it here is Red Bull didn't deserve to go through because they weren't good enough in key moments. Right? Penalties in the attacking phase, they missed a couple of chances, and then in the one moment where they needed to just be calm and not lose the ball, they kicked it into the guy 10 yards in front of him. They countered and scored. Didn't deserve to go through, plain and simple. However, I think game 3 would have been sick. I think they would have done some voodoo magic, 12, 13 people behind the ball, and go for another 0-0 penalty and see if they can get through it, which would have been sick. But Cincy deserved. Missing Matt Miazga now in the next round. So at least for the one game. right? Because it's only one game. So it'll be interesting to see how they recover from that. They're not super deep there, especially now with a couple injuries that they've got. So it'll be interesting to approach that. Do you have any thoughts on that series? Did you watch that
I
series?
I don't know if there's really anything else to add. I figured you would cover everything, and honestly, I was pretty impressed that that was pretty concise. I thought you'd be going on for longer.
No, there. Like I said, we could have chatted a ton if you decided to show up with us, like we tried to get you to. But you hate us, so it's okay. Um, no, it's there's not much to say there because I think you mentioned it in our preview. They didn't deserve to even be there, let alone beat that team. So that's one of the reasons why it doesn't hurt so bad. Like this wasn't a super team that got knocked out like painstakingly, like in 2018. Um, it was a team that was playing on borrowed time. We should have been out 4 weeks ago. So um, disappointed with the result, but the changes that we're making that we were kind of alluding to in the beginning, and we'll do a whole episode on that. And just the off season rumors in general. Um, has hope for the future. So why don't you? I'll let you go ahead then and talk about the Philly New England series.
Yeah, I think when talking about our preview, I think we were both on the same page on this one. I think we were pretty not feeling so great about New England coming in. A lot of late season turmoil going on with that organization, and I think it spilled right into the playoffs as well. Philly would, I mean, Philly have been a very consistent, strong team over the last few seasons, but this Philly team feels beatable. It feels like if your team is, cohesive, working well, in good form, you can beat this Philly team. And that's why I feel like it was definitely like a lot of the off the field stuff having a big impact on New England. And they honestly just looked pretty dead in the water this whole series. I know in game one, Philly pretty much had, it was pretty like, what's the right way to say this? Straightforward victory for Philly in the first one, up 3-0 by halftime. At that point, they could just coast, get the win. Aggregate doesn't really matter, as you mentioned. Game two, Mark Anthony K sent off in the 45th minute. At that point, I mean, you're already down in the series. Then you get a red card in your elimination game. You shot yourself pretty much. So,
Thoughts
kind of,
on that red card? Sorry. Yeah.
oh, I don't know if I don't know if I have a full opinion on it. I saw the play. I think it was the stamp, right? Like he
Yeah. Yeah.
kind of like stamped down.
Yep.
I don't really want to. I don't know if I'd give an opinion on it without looking at it again. But I feel like my instant reaction seeing it was I felt like he maybe could have avoided stepping on him. I think that was my instant reaction. It seemed like he could have avoided stepping on him. Then again, I'd probably want to look at it again before I concrete like
Concretely.
cohesively say that.
Yeah.
Yeah, or concretely say that.
You were combining concretely and
Yeah,
confidently.
yeah.
um, I think it's a straight red. There's one angle there that gets him, and once they saw that, they didn't even bother looking at others. They're like, oh, that's it. See ya. So the cameras might not have done him justice there, but um,
I mean,
agree with you. Like,
regardless, you can't put yourself in a situation like that in an elimination game.
correct, absolutely correct. Um, yeah, New England. We talked about their off the field issues, but um, Philly missing Kai Wagner with on the field, off the field issues. Um, so forced to play a couple players out of position. Will be interesting to see how Cincinnati takes control of that without one of their leaders, their defensive player of the year. If you, I want to skip over to Orlando, Nashville because I want you to talk about the Columbus Atlanta series because I feel like you've got more to say on that than I do. Orlando beats Nashville 1-0, 1-0. Nashville, with one of the best attacking players in the league, ends their season scoreless in 5 of their last 6 games, including the 2 playoff games. Criminal. They are taking Hani Mukhtar's talent and refusing to build the proper team around him. They're taking Hani Mukhtar and just plugging in MLS vets and MLS level players, and then Sam Sturridge. Like, it just feels so underwhelming for what that team should be. Is Gary? So what I want to ask, because the series was pretty straightforward. That Orlando scored once, Nashville scored none. There's not much outside of it to say, but the rumor is that Gary Smith is taking this team as far as he physically can. Do you agree?
You ask if I agree. Is that what you said?
Yes. Do you agree?
I think based on the roster build, yeah. I don't think you get this team much further. This is looking at the roster. This is not, in my opinion, a supporter shield winning team. You could maybe, I mean, anybody who makes the playoffs can technically win the cup, just get hot at the right time. But I would say I feel like he's kind of hit the ceiling with the current build of the team. I think they got to change it up.
They've got an open DP slot. I'm sorry, no, they don't, because Sam Sturridge filled it. I don't know what their U22 situation looks like, but it just feels like they've pigeonholed themselves into not being able to do a lot here. And I think you're correct. I don't think Gary wants to lose the team that he's got. I think he's happy with the group because that's his style of play. And if that's his style of play, first, second round playoff team might be the ceiling for this group. I don't think Hani sticks around much longer after the seasons that he's been having. I think people come calling and the front office listens. So Nashville season over, it'll be very interesting to see how they go about that.
If they lose Hani, that team is going to be dreadful.
Yep.
It is going to be bad.
I think that's like 60% of their goal contributions over the last 2 years gone.
Well, I mean, look at I let me so I pulled up their lineup from game one against Orlando. I imagine the lineup looked pretty similar, if not exactly the same for game two, but there's just nobody to play make in this team. It's Hani and Surge up top, Schafferberg and Muil on the wings, who work hard but are just not creative players. And you have Godoy, Davis, and the back line, who are just great defensively. And I mean, it shows. They were I think the best defensive team in the year. And even in the playoffs, only 1 goal per game. Like, that easily keeps teams in the game. Like, if Atlanta had a defense like that, we'd be challenging for the Supporter Shield and MLS Cup. But there's just nobody to do anything other than Hani. So just focus all your defense on Hani, and then that's it. Nashville's dead in the water.
Yep. That's pretty much all I've got to say there. So why don't we move down up then to the Columbus Atlanta series? I kind of want to hear what you have to say here.
I feel like the series went. You see, yeah. So Atlanta Columbus. I feel like this series went exactly how I expected this series to go. Tons of scoring, no defense. Everybody won their home games. I mean, don't get me wrong, it was super exciting, but I did not expect Atlanta to be able to hang in this series because we are just so bad defensively. We are awful. I don't even know what the first step is to fixing the defense because there's good defensive players. Well, I take that back. I think there's kind of obvious places to work on. It doesn't help when both of your fullbacks are really wingers. So then you have Miles Robinson and Luis Abram in the defense, and that's about it. And Brad. So having two players to stop an attack of Diego Rossi, Cucho Hernandez, Aiden Morris, Matan, like, we never stood a chance. We were never going to be able to defend that. The attack for Atlanta is very exciting. It looks good. It's promising. I think even if we lose Almada, I think we're still in a good spot to be a good attacking team. I'm very much concerned for this defense, though. We gotta figure something else out because this current tactic is just not sustainable. We're not going to be able to take the next step and challenge like we used to if we can't figure it out defensively. But on the Columbus side of things, this team is super exciting. Imagine they were able to make it work and keep Zellaround in this team as well. Oh my God. It'd be like LAFC's team last year when they signed all those players right at the end of the season. It'd be insane. But yeah, they're super exciting. They're going to be a threat to any team they come up against. But I think they're susceptible in the defense. I think that's going to be that's a pain point for them where I think a team can exploit and beat them. But it'll be a really interesting matchup with Orlando in this next round. I'm excited to see that.
Yeah. A lot of people throwing Gonzalo Pineda under the bus, saying that it's his fault and his team sucks, his team selection sucks, and this, that, and the other. I don't think he's a perfect manager, don't get me wrong. But Brad Guzan's got the worst PSXG plus minus in the league, bar Marco Ilicic for the worst team in the league, in the West at least. Um, you can't win when your goalkeeper isn't stopping the shots he's supposed to stop. Period. Right? Um, he did okay in the third game, but you can tell that it's just not there anymore. Brad just, it's not there. And when you're playing up against guys like Cucho Hernandez and Diego Rossi, and those guys are in your conference now, yikes, right? Um, that plus a couple injuries or suspensions in the first game, looking at Almada. I don't know if I put it directly on the coaching decisions there. I'm sure they played a part, but I think they mentioned it too. Like, you look at the bench because of the way the roster rules are, you got your big DPs out there, and off the bench, your choices are Derek Etienne Jr., Machop Chol. Like, Mosquera is your best guy in a U22 role, but out as soon as you get him on, it's like, okay, you need to go. Who do you look for? And you've got no, Tyler Wolf. Like, the roster build doesn't help him a ton either, in respect to the way Columbus builds their roster, for example.
Yeah,
There are factors in there.
I agree. I personally don't think the blame should go on Pineda. I was definitely not a fan of him before the summer window came in. I thought he was really struggling. Definitely, I felt like he was a little bit on the hot seat. But granted, I have this very skewed view of how we were doing in the first half of the season, because I remember we looked back at this and we were comfortably like in a playoff spot even before the summer transfer window. But for some reason, I just always associate that window with like a whole revitalized team, like Sande Silva coming in and Saba coming in. So I definitely think he's definitely earned another season next year, but we got some work to do in the roster build. I'm still not a fan of the front office, even though I think they had a really good summer transfer window, but clearly we are not fully there yet. So let's see what they can do in this upcoming window and hopefully plug these holes, because there's really good potential in this team.
Yeah. And then again, focusing back in Columbus, yikes, that team's just good all around, right? Wilfred Nancy's cooking something special there. And, the 8 goals that they scored, just taking a quick look here. You've got LAFC who scored 6, Atlanta scored 6, Red Bull scored 6, and SKC scored 6. So they are 2 goals ahead of anybody else who's played games. And granted, they had a third game to do it, but they put the ball away at a pretty decent rate. But you're right, defensively they are susceptible. So if you can find a way to break them down, break them down. Over to the West, and we'll start with the most surprising surprising scoreline here, with SKC knocking off St. Louis in 2 games, 4-1 and 2-1. I think we talked about this a little bit. Like, we both predicted St. Louis to move on, but wouldn't be shocked if they had a nightmare. And the playoff experience, I think you talked about the word experience a lot in your clip there, about how not having that experience might hurt them. And it did end up coming back to get them, where they just weren't able to put the pieces together. Sporting KC, hot at the right time, like you just mentioned, come in. I don't want to say annihilate, but damn near annihilate the Western Conference champions. Thoughts?
I know it's very easy to be like, oh, hindsight 2020, like should have seen this coming. But yeah, I mean, exactly as you put it. Like I don't see this result and I'm not like shocked. Like it's a 8-1 upset. Like in any other sport in any other major sport in the US, an 8-1 upset or basically like lowest seed, highest seed upset is crazy. Like it just doesn't look at the NBA. Like it just does not happen. But it just kind of felt like it was I can't think of the right word. Like a float. Like it was just kind of looming over. Like it was just it felt like it was very much a possibility. And I think I'm just looking at the two lineups here from the first game. Man, St. Louis, in terms of their starting lineup, they just do not have much playoff experience in there. I mean, you got Tim Parker and Jake Nerwinski, and I don't even know how much playoff experience Jake Nerwinski has, but that's about it in terms of playoff experience. There's not much other MLS playoff experience in here. Granted, not a lot of MLS experience, period, in this team. Uh, and it hasn't really affected them too much the whole season, but playoffs is a different animal. I think they were a little bit unlucky to run into SKC. I think SKC is red hot right now, and we're finally starting to see a fully healthy SKC team work together, and I think they're firing on all cylinders. So, do I think St. Louis uh, played their best? No. Do I think they played their worst? I also don't think so. I think they just caught a really good SKC team.
Yeah, and that's the thing, we talked about it, right? Getting hot at the right time is it's almost better than being just good, right? Because momentum's a real thing. SKC proved it. They're ones to watch, man. Houston SKC is going to be a dirty matchup, dude. I can't wait for that. But speaking of Houston, they beat RSL in a two-time penalty kick uh, showdown, but technically never lost once in open play. And this is where my problem with the 3 games happens, where Houston did not lose a single game. And on the last day, were in a position to not go through. A win and 2 ties, and they might have been knocked out. That is my biggest gripe. And I was holding it for this, just for this exact moment, because Houston were not the team that should have gone. They were not the team that should have gone home. So I'm glad that they won. I'm glad they went. RSL were great. This was a great series. If we're going to keep best of 3, I like the MLS 1.0 style of first to 5 points. A tie is a tie. The problem is Apple wants drama, and drama isn't fair. Houston were in a position where I don't think they should have been. I think this was a harsh position to be in. I'm glad they got through it because they deserve to go through on this. They were the better team. They were able to withstand away from home the RSL onslaught and a wonder goal by Jefferson Savarino. But if we're going to talk about the playoff system, this is where it fails for me. When a team doesn't technically lose a game and can still go.
Maybe that goes back to your point on aggregate. If you eliminate the extra time results and you just leave ties as ties and just, take those scores and put it to the aggregate, then Houston's not in that position because they got the win, as you said. And then from that point on, if you never lose, you'll just go on. But, I see your point because, they could have went through, never lost in regular time and got knocked out of the playoffs. So, yeah, I mean, that's why I feel like they keep switching up the playoff format so that you can find the right format. So it is the best format to get the most out of teams. So you don't see teams in Houston's situation getting knocked out.
Right, because that for as much, I use the term nonsense, for as much nonsense as MLS playoff format Twitter was spouting out this week, if Houston had not gone through, they would have had a leg to stand, right? Look at this team. They didn't lose a game, and they're not going through because of some silly penalties. And that was what everybody was afraid of, right? The 7 or the 8, the 9 seed goes against the 1 seed, packs it in, goes to penalties 0-0 3 straight times, and moves on. Yeah, it's harsh. Like I'm not going to deny that. I think that we could probably sit down and do the math and be like, oh, how many must-win games does this format put out versus if round one, semifinals, conference finals were all two-legged series? How many bet? I think it's like 2 less games that are like must-win. So we could look at it that way too. I don't think the format's leaving anytime soon, and I don't mind it. I think it's fine. But this is where it gets me. But Benny Ball prevails. RSL a worthwhile competitor. I think they're moving in a great direction. I think next year's gonna be great for them. But Houston moves on to play SKC. A wild couple of games here for LAFC versus Vancouver. An absolute onslaught. 5-2 in the first game with 4 set piece goals for LAFC. And then LAFC wins 1-0 with the referee playing center mid destroyer in the 90th minute for LAFC against Vancouver. Absolute scenes. Technically within the rules where you don't have to stop the game for running into a referee only if a ball hits a referee. I mean, common sense versus loss of the game, right? Dude lining up to take a wicked half volley, and Tim Ford just like truck stick, boom. Like, and then granted, should Vancouver have kept the ball? Yeah, dude tried to turn with 3 guys on his back. They go forward and scored. It gets called back, whatever. But Vanni Sartini is my new favorite like NPC in this game. Dude just runs around screaming at everybody. They get 1 point. It was taken out of context, but I think at one point he said, like, if you found this dude's body floating down the river, people would come looking for me. Like, dude's mental. But we need characters like that in the game, right? This is the same dude who was on stage with Nickelback singing, whatever song Nickelback have, like halfway through the season. Man, I thought Vancouver was going to get it done. Didn't realize how bad their set piece defending was. Again, don't know if they should have come out with a win against LAFC, but I think might have been. Oh, yeah. And the goal that LAFC scored was a garbage penalty that I don't think should have been given. So, again, could they have gotten away with it, gotten to a game 3? Sure. Would LAFC probably smack them at home? Yeah. But I think it would have made it for an interesting game 3. Thoughts on that game?
I feel like the whole referee thing in the second game is a bit overblown. I feel like people were acting like it was a penalty and the ref dove in front of the shot of the penalty. Like as you said, it was gonna be like a half volley from the edge of the box. Like, let's not act like he was standing in front of an open net about to tap it in. There's no guarantee at all that was gonna go in. And this is definitely not biased because I picked LAFC to move on and needed it for my prediction, but I really feel like LAFC is going to be a good study on how much a star can carry a team in MLS playoffs. And I want to use the term carry loosely because obviously there's many people on LAFC pulling their weight. Ryan Hollingshead, 2 goals. Hello? Striker or defender? I don't know.
Adam's punching the air right now.
But I think this team will go as far as Denny Bawanga takes them. And I'm not a betting man, but I certainly would not bet against Denny Bawanga right now.
Okay. If you're talking about teams you don't want to bet on, it's Seattle in the MLS Cup playoffs. Teams know how to get it done. 2-0 in the first game, lose 3-1 in the second, then 1-0 in the third. Both at home, shutouts at home. Beat up pretty good away. I think Dallas gets hurt here by the loss of Alan Velasco and their best attacking player, really. I don't think that they were a lock. I did pick them to move on. I thought that they were going to take this game 3, which I thought they were going to get to, and get it to pens. That's what I think the game plan should have been against a team like this. Seattle is doing something that's kind of crazy where their best players are now coming off the bench. Ladero, Rui Diaz, they're just there. And whenever they need them, they get called up. So they're doing most of the stuff without, which makes them a very dangerous team for the next round. I didn't watch a lot of Seattle Dallas just because of timing and West Coast stuff. Um, but I do think Alan Velasco makes a difference in game 3. Not having him hurts. So be interesting to see how he comes back next year. And again, Areola working in with him and Ferreira for a full season. Can they get higher up the table? They've got a couple of pieces they need to fix as well, but definitely an interesting team for the future. Did you have thoughts on this game at all?
My first thought is don't forget they were also missing the third best striker in the USMNT pool for that last game as well.
Oh, that's right. That's right. I forgot about that.
That doesn't help as well.
Yeah, that's fair.
I think this Seattle team is very much beatable. It felt like every week that I was seeing results from them, it was like some really scrappy result that they somehow pulled out. Like I think they're really solid defensively, and then somehow they just happen to like bundle home a goal every now and then and win a couple games. And I do wonder if this was a fully healthy Dallas team going into this last game. To your point, if things would have changed, but without them, they only registered one shot the entire game, which is awful. And you're never going to win if you have one shot. So I think, as much as Seattle is a strong team, I kind of view them in a similar light to Orlando, but I think that Orlando is a bit more comprehensive attacking wise. I worry a little bit about Seattle in the attack because I'm not big on Jordan Morris as a striker. Rusnak right now seems to be stepping up a bit and pulling his weight in the attack. Leo Chu is he's very good on the ball, but he's not, massive goal scorer for the team. Same thing with Christian Roldan, I feel like. So, I look at the team and the only person I see as the goal scorer is Jordan Morris, and I don't love that. So I know you mentioned Rui Diaz and Ladero coming off the bench to make some impacts, but I worry about the team attacking wise. I think they may have benefited a little bit from a weakened Dallas team, but we'll see what happens. They're going to be tested because they're going up against a very strong LAFC team.
That they are. And I think that's pretty much a good transition to move into predictions times. What do you think?
I love a good transition, so
You and me both. I'm pretty good at it. We did the Western Conference first last time in terms of predictions. So why don't we go over to the East and start with Cheater Crybaby FC, aka FC Cincinnati. Bribers too. They bribe the referees. Versus
anything else to throw in there?
Not that I can say on the podcast, but once we stop recording.
Okay.
And then they take on Philadelphia. It is at Cincinnati. Again, Cincinnati missing Matt Miazga and Nick Hagland to suspension injury, respectively. Philadelphia missing Kai Wagner. I kind of want to hear where your brain's at with this.
So, when I originally put the bracket together, I'll kind of just jump right to where I had it. So I had FCC going through. I think Philly wasn't in great form coming into the playoffs. Round 1, they're playing against a New England team in turmoil. So, yes, New England aren't just like walkovers, but it also wasn't a very difficult test for them in the first round. FCC is going to be a difficult test. Lucia Costa, Brandon Vasquez are not going to be the same level of attack that they went up against in New England. I am worried about the injury suspension issue at the center back position, especially because they play 3 center backs, I think. So who's even the next man up there? Do you play Ray Gaddis as a center back then?
Well, that's kind of where I was going to break down my prediction, but I can jump in if you'd like.
Go for it.
Um,
Transition.
yeah. So here's the way when I watched them in Cincinnati, when they did a rotated look, it was Mosquera, Miazga, Hag. You're missing two of those players now. When Haglund got hurt, Ian Murphy filled in. He was the next guy up. So now you're looking at either switching to a four back, which they haven't done a lot of, and keeping Mosquera and Ian Murphy together with Arias, Powell, Gaddis, whoever. Or you're looking at a three back still and either moving. My guess is they'd move Gaddis to a right center back role, Mosquera on the left with, or Mosquera in the middle with Murphy on the left, or flip flop them, and then keep Arias and Barreal on the wide spots. That'd be my guess because I think Ray Gaddis has enough de je ne sais quoi.
I have no idea.
Professionalism.
Okay. I
Professionalism.
didn't know
That's the
where
word
you're
I'm
going
looking
with that.
for. To be able to adapt to that role a little bit and just learn from what other people were doing. I don't think they're going to go run out Joey Akpuno, who they drafted this year, or London Aghedo. Don't think either of those guys are going to be a part of it. So I think it's either Powell or Gaddis who fills into that spot. I don't think they go four back here, especially with the two striker situation that Philly brings. Now, Philly, on the other hand, are missing two of their own big defenders in, as we mentioned, Kai Wagner, one of the best left backs in the league, and Mr. Jacob Gleesnes with an injury that is going to take him out for the majority of the playoffs. My guess is the entire playoffs. So when they lined up against New England last game, it was Mbaizo, Harriel, Elliott, and Lowe in the back. They also didn't start, and I'm assuming it was for yellow card accumulation because, and somebody can correct me if I'm wrong here. No, it can't be. Julian Carranza came off. Maybe it was for injury in the first game because he wasn't even on the bench for the second game. So I'll have to look into that. But Carranza didn't play. It was Quinn Sullivan and Mikael Ura with Gazdag behind him, and then Bedoya got a 90-minute run as well. This is going to be a really interesting test, personally, for me, because of the amount of missing pieces. I am interested to see what FCC can do to pull something out here. That being said, I am going to stick with the prediction that I made in the conference semifinals when I had Philly and RBNY playing. And I've got Philly going through here. And the reason is this, when Cincinnati played Red Bull and they did that rotated squad thing, they very easily keyed in on the pressing cues of the two players who didn't play a lot, which was at first Nick Hagland, and then Ian Murphy was the second pressing cue when they flipped him at halftime. They now have two different spots that they can do that in with Ian Murphy again and whoever it may be, whether it be a four back or whatever. And I think Philly's, Jim Curtin's going to be able to be successful with that. And also Cincinnati has a supporter shield curse. So they're looking for some random way to go out. So I'm going to go Philly here.
Well, I'm very happy you went Philly because now I feel much more comfortable in my prediction to go with FCC.
You're a loser.
I didn't realize that Gleesnes was also out, but I guess that's kind of it kind of evens it out. Both of them missing two defenders, so
yeah, and then it's who comes forward in the attack, right? And I'll be honest with you, Bupensta, not he scored against us, yeah, but when we were able to set our defensive block, he wasn't impressive. He didn't do well against us when he started in the first game when we were in Cincinnati. I think that Elliott can lock him up. Damian Lowe is very Andres Reyes like, where he will just beat him physically. So that leaves you then Lucia Costa with Baji or Brandon Vasquez, and Brandon Vasquez got shut down uh, against us. Now, can he do better against other people? I don't know. But as Jason said while we were watching the game, Jesus Ferreira clear. So, I mean, I don't really know what more to say. Jesus Ferreira clear
Jason gets it. He gets
doesn't
it.
he didn't say anything about that about Tom Barlow. That's all I'm saying. So if we're talking about USMNT third best striker, Tom's got a goal in the playoffs. Jesus Ferreira has a penalty, and we know those don't count. So yeah,
I
Greg, get
the,
on
the
get on the phone.
the only thing I will say to end it off is if Philly, in my opinion, if Philly want to go through, Mr. Pozdog is going to have to step it up because it's been a rough year for him outside of the penalty spot.
Yeah, yeah. All right. So your predictions FCC, mine's Philly. We will move on here to Columbus versus Orlando. And I actually don't like this because I want to change my pick from what it
Not
is here
allowed.
after watching that, and it won't let me.
Not allowed.
But I'll let you go first here. What are your thoughts on this matchup? 2 versus 3.
Yeah. So this is going to be a really good test of the Orlando back line, who I feel like has been strong. Granted, going against the Nashville attack is not exactly an incredible test of defensive strength, but they are definitely going to be tested against this Columbus attack. My concern for Columbus is their road record. They got beat by Atlanta in Atlanta. Their road record coming into the playoffs saw them only have 4 wins on the road. And in this case, you got to get a win. You got to find some way to win. Yes, you can just take it all the way to extra time and penalties and whatnot, but you got to find a way to win. And they really haven't done that on the road this year. So I think that already gives Orlando a bit of an advantage. And I think I just like Orlando a little bit more because I feel like they're a bit more of a well-rounded team. I like their attack. I like their defense, strong midfield. I think the more well-rounded team at home takes it. So I think Orlando goes on to the next round.
You're such a bad rival.
That's such a what?
You're such a bad rival. Oh, I like Orlando. I think Orlando is great.
Oh, I don't like Orlando.
That's
but
not.
I can't deny that they
roll
have
the
a
clip
good
back.
team.
Roll the clip. Edit the clip back where you say, "Oh, I like Orlando."
You could take me out of context all you want, but I don't like Orlando. But I can recognize the fact that they have a good team.
Loser. So originally I put Orlando going through. But after watching Columbus play and their devastating attack, I'm changing it so that Columbus goes through.
You just don't want to ever pick the higher seed. You just want to have upsets in every single round forever.
Well, I'll tell you, and I'll spoil things here. Originally, when I did my predictions, I had Orlando in the final.
And
But
what's wrong with that?
because Columbus is a better team. Orlando
Are
snuck
you
by Nashville 1-0, 1-0. And they weren't bad, right? I'm not saying that they played poorly. But Columbus went in and absolutely ruined Atlanta.
That's not saying that much. Atlanta has one of the worst defenses in the league.
Goal came from Cartagena, and Duncan McGuire didn't score. And then in the second game, once again, Duncan McGuire didn't score, and Ivan Angulo scored. Now, here's what I'll say is that if I remember correctly, both goals were kind of like, for lack of a better term, worldies. I think they were both from super deep. Let me see this first one. Oh no, I'm sorry. The first one, the goal in the second game was a turnover by Dax McCarty. That's right, 6 minutes into the game. That's right. And then the first one, the October 30th game. Boo, 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 boo. Looking. Oh yeah, it was a worldie. It was a worldie from Cartagena from 35 yards out. I knew one of them was. You can't rely on worldies and back passes to save you. See St. Louis in the playoffs. They stopped getting goals gifted to them. Boom. Out of the playoffs. That's right. I found a way to get one more dig at them before they're gone. You're damn right I did.
They're already dead. Leave them alone.
Well, and here's the thing: even if Columbus does make a mistake or give up a worldie like that, they've got the firepower to knock 4 past you. So I'm gonna go Columbus here and think that they've got more ability to be successful in the big game, and they're away, so they're away from home, which is fine. They're not great away from home, but I do think that they will have. Uh, I think they'll have more success now, knowing that other people other than Cucho Hernandez can score the ball. Right? They had like 4 different goal scorers in the last game with 4 goals. So yeah, I think Columbus goes in and it's Columbus Philly in the final.
Listen, I am happy to let you continue and stay on a wrong prediction like that. But here's what I will say that I think you're overlooking. I know you say that Orlando can't rely on wonder goals and gifts to move on to the next round, but going up against Nashville, that is the best defensive team, I believe, in the whole league, at least in the West. Joint defensive best team in the league with Seattle versus Columbus, who were the 3rd worst defensive team out of the playoff teams going into the playoffs. So I think the Orlando attack is going to look much better because they're going against the worst defense. They're not going up against the best defense in the league. And I also think that Columbus's attack is not going to look as deadly as it did against Atlanta, who was the worst defensive record going into the playoffs. So
it's interesting you think I care about what you think.
Well, I know you don't. So that's why I'm happy that you get to stick on your wrong prediction.
We will see. We will see. The TikTok will be posted and it'll be out there for the world to see. Jump on over to the West here. We'll start with Houston versus SKC. Peter Vermees is hot. Benny Ball is Benny.
I'll take that out of context. Peter Vermees is hot, huh?
Grace, get him. Come on. Get him, Grace. Get him. Oh God, relax. Yeah, SKC's going in a really good path. Benny Ball is doing its job and getting results when they need to. Reminder that Houston still hasn't lost in the playoffs either, outside of the penalty. So, here's the other kicker, and I'll put it out there again. Let me just get this really quick. We talked about home versus away. Houston Dynamo, 11 wins, 2 losses at home all year. I think that goes in their favor. SKC only 3 wins away. Granted, they did do a really good job at St. Louis, but they also had that rivalry bump, for lack of a better term. Like, oh, this is St. Louis. It's the battle of the neighbors. In the playoffs for the first time ever. We got to be on top. Houston's a different game. They don't have that same little buzz. I think Houston in the one-off game wins this and moves on.
I don't think we're gonna have the same prediction on any of these so far.
Oh my goodness! All you do, oh yeah, you just keep picking the lower seeds. Yeah.
You know for a fact that I'm not picking.
Now you're gonna pick the one wrong time to take the lower seed. God,
I'm going with SKC.
Loser.
Houston snuck through the first round. You could talk as many times as you want about them not losing. SKC hasn't lost in the playoffs either. So SKC has 3 wins in the playoffs, 0 losses. Houston has 1 win, 2 draws. And
technically, Sporting KC has 2 wins and a draw. Dweeb.
Oh yeah, you're right.
Yeah, you're damn right. I'm right.
Okay. Regardless, 2 wins and a draw for SKC. Dismantled St. Louis on the road. The 3 road win SKC team is not the same SKC team that we're looking at right now. Whereas I think this is the same Houston team we've seen all season, which I'm not saying that as a bad thing. It's a good Houston team, but this SKC team is a team to be reckoned with right now. I think they are healthy. They are motivated. They have an experienced head coach. They have an experienced team. There's lots of things going in their favor. Houston may not have lost in the first round, but they nearly did at home in the last game. And if that's going to be the same scenario here and this game goes to penalties, I find it hard to bet against Tim Melia. This dude knows how to get it done in penalties. So I very much like SKC here.
For a guy who gave me a ton of crap for talking about how teams are going to try and knock it out in penalties and I have too much faith in it, now you're going to use it as your defense.
It's a one-off game now. It's not a
Get out.
three-game
Nope. You're
series.
fired. You're fired. You're
I'm
done.
fired. I was never hired to begin
You're
with.
fired. You're fired. No, I don't think. By the way, I don't think it's a blowout. Like I'm not saying like this is 5-0, go home and don't even show up getting on the ball. Like I think it's close, but I think Houston finds a way to get it done because they always get it done at home.
Does
That
Houston
being said,
even have that potential in them to blow out a team?
that being said, if it does go to penalties, Steve Clark's not bad at penalties either. You know, he made 3 saves in 2 penalty shootouts. So, now Tim Melia's made a lot more, but I don't think it's as much of a blowout as you know some people might think it is. That's all I'm saying. We'll finish up here then. Oh,
I want to add one thing really quick. I did look. I want to put some respect on Houston's name. They do have a few blowouts this year, so fair to them.
The disrespect. Your disrespect of Benny Ball is unwarranted, unnecessary, and uncool. We'll move
use
on
that as
then.
the opening clip. That's the opening clip right there.
I love it. We will move on to Seattle versus LAFC then, and we will finish this up with our predictions.
Come on, we can get one on the same page here.
Go first. Give me your reasoning. Maybe I'll side with you.
Okay. I am not sold on this Seattle team, so I am going with LAFC. I'll just tell you that off the bat. I think this comes down to a game of who's big time players stepping up. And as I said before, I'm not betting against Denny Bouanga right now. The dude was one of the best, if not the best player during the regular season and has not taken a step back at all in the playoffs. 3 goals in the first 2 games of the playoffs. This dude is a goal scoring machine. Seattle, I don't love their attack. I think their attack will struggle. I don't think LAFC has the most lethal defense, but I think they certainly have enough to contain Seattle. And I think LAFC has enough firepower with Denny Bouanga alone to get the away win and move on.
You've left Grace speechless.
Well, considering she never speaks, I guess she's always speechless.
She speaks all the time. Thank you very much. You're just not cool enough to hear it. All right. Here's my quarrel. Here's my problem. LAFC on the road only has 4 wins all year. They also have had trouble in recent, and again, Vancouver is the outlier, but I think we talked about it when I was making predictions of Vancouver moving on in the first place, that they have trouble seeing games out. Just trying to pull up their last couple of games here. In the end run to the season, you know, they lost to Charlotte, they lost to Inter Miami, they lost to Portland. They beat the Galaxy in that one-off. They tied St. Louis, they tied Philly. Then they lost to RSL. Then now they're on a bit of a win streak, so a little hot. I don't have either of these two in my actual bracket, so this pick has nothing to do with what I've already picked, which is nice. Something about Seattle in the final or in the playoffs, just this is tough.
I'd say the same thing about LAFC. They just won the cup last season.
Yeah, and how many times do teams repeat?
Like back to back?
Yeah.
Has Seattle gone back to back?
No, they've made it to the final, but they have not gone
Oh,
back to
you're
back.
saying. Oh, okay. I see what you're saying.
Last back
Well,
to back winners.
MLS 4.0. Anything can happen.
Last back to back winners. Nope. Nope. LA 2011, 2012. That's a nice it's a nice
Maybe LA is about to do it again.
that whole game is a mess. You know what? Here's what I'll say. I can see it going either way. I think Seattle have the expertise and the ability to get it done. I think LAFC have the star power, the firepower to get it done. And just so that I can say that we definitely are not going to agree on any of our predictions, and I have a chance to beat you in our prediction standings, we're going Seattle to the conference finals. I think it'll probably be close on like penalties or something crazy, some like 90th minute winner, something crazy like that. So up the Sounders, up Benny Ball. I'm not supporting anybody in the West or in the East. So we're all Western Conference fans this playoffs. So because everybody has wronged us except for Orlando, but I'm not supporting Orlando. I'm not a loser. Anything else you want to add to your predictions? Maybe change them to agree with the person who's going to be right.
Well, then I wouldn't have to change anything.
Good one.
Thank you.
Nice. All right, y'all. Thanks so much for listening and to our recap and predictions episode for the semifinals. We got a ways to go before the next one kicks off. It is in just about 11 days here, which is the Saturday after Thanksgiving. Saturday and Sunday after Thanksgiving. So we got a little bit to go with international break. Make sure you're following us wherever you get your podcasts so you know the next time we go live with either MLS history, some what went wrongs, and what else do we have? Oh yeah, the more recent stuff with Red Bull being massive and all that. That's right. We're going to talk about that. And then make sure you're following us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, so you can interact with us. We have a lot of fun with those. We're posting a lot of our history content, reposting it right now because we've been, waiting for our time to come back. But the more recent stuff is coming soon. So make sure you're there, subscribed, and interacting with us because that's what it's all about. Thanks so much, everyone, for listening. We hope you enjoyed it, and we will see you next time on the next episode of the Designated Players Podcast. See ya.